Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the How to Write a Resume workshop. My name is Tyree. I'm from the Careers and Student Employment Service here at Macquarie. Joining me is my colleague Sue. She's also from the Careers and Student Employment Service as well. Welcome to those in the room. Welcome to those on Zoom. We'll go ahead and start now. So just as a heads up, this session is being recorded on Echo 360. That means just your voices, not your likeness is going to be recorded. For students that cannot attend today, as well as for yourself to maybe review later on. So in the acknowledgement of the country, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the Macquarie University land, the Willamette clan of the Durham Nation. We pay respect to the elders and knowledge holders who have and continue to share their wisdom and knowledge, nurturing and sustaining our environments, cultures, and education. I'd also like to extend my welcome to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander students joining today as well. So the outline for today, we're going to talk about skills employers look for, the purpose of a resume, preparing your resume. We're going to do a resume exercise as well that will also involve people on Zoom. So there's going to be an interactive component to it. We're going to talk briefly about, actually we won't talk about cover letters as much, and then we'll take questions and talk further about our resources to help you to create or improve your current resume. So learning objectives, why are you here? Well, again, you're going to learn the skills employers look for on your resume, so you know what you're writing toward. You're going to learn the purpose of a resume and why write one in general. How to prepare your resume, so how to write one that's going to be attractive to employers that they'll actually read and then want to act on. And then resources to help you write a impactful resume. Things you can do yourself, the self-help, so that your application or your resume is as best as it can be before you apply to that next job. So I just want to do an introduction from yourself. I want to find out who's here today. So I'll go around the room and on Zoom as well. Feel free to put your answers in chat. Just looking for your name, your year, your degree, and whether or not you have a current working resume in drafts or what have you. So we'll start with yourself here in the black jacket.
Hi everyone, my name is Leroy. Good morning everyone, my name is Leroy. I'm in the year 2 of Bachelor of Communication Media. I'm doing major regulation, and even in the year 2, I still haven't got any experience in writing a resume, and I'm here today to hope I can gain some experience of my future career. Thanks for everyone here in hearing my speech.
Thank you. Maybe just pass on to perhaps the person behind you.
Okay, my name is Francisco. I'm here to better write on my resume to improve it. I'm currently working, but I'm looking into more professional work in the future, in the near future. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Tamir, and I'm in Bachelor of Commerce with major in finance, and I'm looking to improve my resume, and I'm looking to get a job sometime in the near future.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm in my 3rd year of a Bachelor of Clinical Science. I do have a resume, but I particularly wanted to join these sessions because I want to learn more about how to adapt it to a particular job that I'm applying for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi guys, my name is Chitra and I recently joined Macquarie, and I'm currently pursuing my Masters of Sustainable Development, and that's the reason I'm here. This is my first seminar since I've joined Macquarie University, so yeah, I'm excited. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris. I'm doing a Bachelor of Science, and pretty much just want to learn how to put what I've learned in uni on the resume, whether it be projects or GitHub portfolios or coding portfolios. And yeah, that's about it.
It's done.
Thanks everyone.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Thanks. Sue, anyone on chat that would?
Yes, so we have Sorry, we have Matthew, who's in his third year doing a Bachelor's of IT, and his resume is poor and outdated. We also have Solargal, Master of Business Analytics in the final semester, so that's great. And we've got T, who is in their final year of an undergrad applied finance and business analytics degree. T has a working resume but would like to improve to be more employable.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks, students. And so while this session will be a bit general, generic in nature, introductory, feel free to ask any particular questions that relate to your situation. Anytime we have a break for questions. Also, for those on Zoom, feel free to type in your questions as well, and either Sue or I will read them out, and we're happy to go through them. So thanks for indulging us today with an introduction. So, next thing we want to talk about is the skills that employers are looking for. So, employers are looking for well-rounded graduates. Does anyone here know what we mean when we say well-rounded graduates from employers? What does that mean? So it's exactly what it sounds like. Someone that has a good wealth of experience to your degree, right? So it's not just I went to uni and I studied or I worked part-time. It's, it can be I took part in these student groups, or I took part in this PACE internship, or PACE placement, or PACE work integrated learning activity. I found my own internship, or I worked within my area as well. Or I have attended a few networking events and met some people within my industry. So it's really more comprehensive than just I have a job or I have a degree. So employers are looking for, can you do the job in particular? Do you have the skills, experience, knowledge, sometimes experience, knowledge, but also interest and drive and willingness to learn to do the job? Will you do the job? Do you have the attitude, the aptitude, again, the willingness to learn, the growth mindset is what it's also called, to learn to be an asset to their company? Will you fit in? And when we say cultural fit, we don't mean your ethnic background, we actually mean the culture of the company. So how the company conducts their work, how they relate to their customers or clients or the public, and how they run their day-to-day business. Is that going to be conducive to yourself, your personality? Are you someone that enjoys your manager sitting with everyone else within the team? Or do you prefer that your manager is accessible only when you need them? Or do you prefer to come in formal dressed and work in a cubicle? Or do you prefer a casual, relaxed atmosphere in terms of dress codes and maybe a more open plan office? So it's more about that. Authenticity as well, as in, are you yourself on the paper, on the page? And do you come across as someone who is, sounds like a genuine graduate? And are your expectations and what you put realistic? And then interpersonal skills. Basically, do you have great people skills? Do you get along with others? Are you going to work well within that team or within that business? Is also a major component as well. So at Macquarie, we have outlined 14 employability skills that we have gotten from industry as well as current research on what industry needs across many different degrees and organizations and industries overall. So we've come up with these 14 key skills. I won't read them out, but a lot of these are skills you already have, right? Skills you've already worked on and can already demonstrate on your resume, I'm sure. And so as we go forward, think back to these employability skills as well as other relevant skills you have that will be on your resume to help underline why you're the right candidate for a particular job or opportunity. Any questions so far? Any questions on chat?
No, not at all.
Okay, so now let's talk about the purpose of a resume. Why do you have to write these documents, right? Well, there is a reason. So it's a marketing tool. It's to get you to the next stage of the selection process. Now, keep in mind, it is a marketing tool. So what that means is that anything that you're not particularly excelled at, or anything you're not particularly proud of, or you wish you had done better, maybe like your WAM or your GPA or what have you, you don't have to mention it. It's to make you look like the best, most suitable candidate for the role. So things that don't do that for you, either leave them out or try to work around them. We can talk about how to do that as well. Don't want to lie, but we can draw the employer's attention to other things to cover up for any shortcomings. You can also show the employer what you have to offer, obviously, so that they can, this is their first impression of you, right? So they're looking at your resume to then determine, do I want to interview you, or do I want to phone screen you, or whatever the next step is. It's also to show the employer you're a good fit for the role. That you, again, you don't have to meet 100% of the job criteria. If you meet around 50%, around half of the really important bits, go ahead and apply. The company does expect for you to have some room to grow in the job, and so they're not looking for somebody that comes in the door knowing everything. Because if that's the case, what room do you have to grow, right, into the role? You're going to get bored, more than likely, pretty quickly. So think about how much of the role you fit now and how much you can learn on the job as you go. When in doubt, call or email the employer to get clarity on that, on kind of where you sit versus what the job is asking for. And it's also to stand out from other candidates. Right? And so you want to ensure that you have, we're going to go over this toward the end, but no spelling mistakes, great formatting, easy to read in a few seconds, details are very apparent, that sort of thing. But all that advice we'll go over toward the end. We'll also use some tools on how to ensure you're doing all of that. So to do this, to help stand out to other employers, you want to customize your resume. And we're going to say this probably a few times during today's presentation, but each resume you send should be targeted or adjusted to the job criteria. By a show of hands, or a show of hands on Zoom, how many of you have sent the same resume out for several different jobs? So what we call the spray and pray approach. There's nothing wrong with it. You know, you need a job, you're looking for a job. Okay? See, 3 hands, 3 honest hands. Cool, in the room. And there may be some more on Zoom. Look, while that, logically, right, it seems fine. Like, I need to find a job, I have a resume, I'm going to send it out to the jobs. But from the employer's perspective, they have a job ad. They have certain criteria they want. They even have certain language they use. So maybe instead of customer service, they may say client relations. If you don't have a word like client relations in your current resume, they're going to wonder, well, did you read my job ad? Because you're saying customer service, but I'm saying client relations. So I don't think there's a real match here. So it's really that, that simple, honestly. So to do that, you want to make sure you read the job ad carefully and look for explicit and implied information. Explicit meaning what the company says outright. We need great communication skills, teamwork, maybe a few IT skills. Implied meaning that they didn't say it directly in words, but you can imply from the nature of the work or the nature of the team or the industry that it'll be useful. So maybe if it's a multinational corporation with companies or offices in other countries, maybe being flexible and being able to join calls at outside normal hours. Or sometimes it's many times a great idea to be able to speak a certain language, especially if that language is where they have a customer base or an office as well. Be prepared to move sections around. So while we're going to go over, in a brief detail, the different sections of the resume, it's not set in stone. So don't feel like what we're outlining is, the way you must do it. There are going to be some sections that are more relevant to employers than others. Be prepared to get rid of or cull irrelevant information. So don't think of your resume as a checklist of everything you've done that you're proud of. It's more of a checklist of everything you've done that's relevant to the company and that you're proud of, right? Highlight relevant skills instead and experiences. You can also bold them or put them in a separate section or anything. We have other ideas, other suggestions on how to draw attention to the information you really want employers to see. And also view your resume through the eyes of the recruiter. So many times when recruiters look at resumes, they're time poor, right? So they have maybe 30 minutes to look at 80 applications during the course of their day. So it's an exclusionary process, meaning they're looking for a reason as to why they should exclude your resume or not carry it forward. And so you want to look at it through their eyes of what are the glaring mistakes, the errors, what can I do to ensure that my resume is as perfect and as easy to read and as easy to look at in a few seconds as possible. Anyone want to take a guess on the amount of seconds an employer takes to read your resume?
30 seconds.
30 seconds? Shorter than that. Anybody else?
15.
15? Shorter than that. Anybody else?
6.
About 6, yeah. You've heard this before, I'm sure. Yeah, so 6 seconds, right? So not even reading it, they're more scanning it. So that's why we say make things very apparent, very obvious, right? To the employer, because they're time poor. And the more you do that, the easier you make their job to determine whether or not they should consider you for an interview or whatever the next stage is. It's important to keep in mind that your resume is to get you to the interview. So we want to make sure that we put the best representative of you forward.
This might be a little bit later for the
Just so people can hear you.
no. This might be for a little bit later in the workshop, but how can you look at your resume with an unbiased view? Are there tips for that?
That's quite a good question.
That's a great question. So, one, you can book a one-on-one appointment with one of our careers advisors, such as myself or Sue, and we're not, we're obviously disconnected, so we can just hack it up for you and tell you what needs to be fixed, right? We also have a great tool called CV360 that I'll show a video on later on, or Sue will later on, that can actually read through your resume. It's an AI software, it reads through your resume, and it gives you good general feedback on what a great resume should look like, but from a general perspective. So it won't give you specific details around, like, it may not recognize some of your IT skills, you may flag because it doesn't know that term, but to get it up to a general standard, it's a great tool. Yeah. You can also have, of course, friends, people you meet within your networking, whether it be through careers fair or colleagues or past graduates that are in industries you're interested in. They can also read your resumes as well. Yeah. Good question. Any other questions?
No, not from chat, they've been answered.
Okay, thank you. So, to understand even whether or not to apply to a job and kind of where you fit, you want to do a bit of job analysis. So if you think about the whole job application process, it's like a pie or a pie chart. The job analysis bit will probably be half that or so, depending on where you are with your resume. So it's all the bits you do before you actually write or revise your resume. And I'll be sending these slides out. We'll email them out to everyone later this week with the recording, so don't feel like you have to capture everything. So you want to understand the job ad first of all. You want to understand what they're looking for, how much of the criteria you fit, and if there are any gaps or shortcomings. As well as what skills and experience, of course, are required. Many times it says, 1 to 2 years of experience, and let's say you've maybe never had a job before in that industry. Keep in mind that your studies and any PACE work you've done, any work in integrated learning you've done, even any virtual experiences you've done through websites like the Forge, that can count as experience. So you're not coming as a blank slate. You do have an education, and you do have, in many cases, some work in integrated learning, especially if you're in your final year or if you graduated. So take that into account in that year or so of experience that you do have. So don't feel like, well, after a year, I don't have a year, so I can't apply. And again, when in doubt, pick up the phone, email them, call them, see what they're after. If it's an entry-level job for graduates, they're open to graduates, even if you don't have a year's worth of experience.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to ask that, you mean that experience is not a job experience always, and it's about studies also?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So let's say, for instance, you're studying marketing, and in one of your marketing units, you did a marketing analysis project where you looked at a real industry and you helped to craft a marketing plan for whatever industry or company that was. That's experience, right? That's academic-based learning, but that's still realistic of the actual industry or market you're going into, right? So that can count. And again, none of you are blank slates. Everyone, by the time you graduate, would have done something related to your industry. I think I have a hand back here.
If there's something you don't understand on the job ad, or can you call them or email them, ask them about it?
Absolutely. You know why? Because no one else does that. Other students, other people think, oh, I'm going to sound like I am not knowledgeable or like I'm dumb if I call them up and ask them a question. Many times they're great, they're very happy to hear from you. Be prepared though, when you call them up, that could turn into a mini interview. They may say, hey, well, I have you on the phone, tell me about this on your resume, or have you done this or that? And if the conversation goes well, you could hang up with an interview already scheduled. Because again, you're helping their job. You're helping them to make their job easier to hire you. They can vet you, they can ask you questions, they can get details from you right then, and they may say, great, just send me your resume, you sound perfect, and then they'll look at your suitability from there. But absolutely, call, email, especially if they have the contact details there, they want to be contacted. So that's totally fine. Any other questions? All great questions, by the way. Keep them coming. So where do we leave off? Right, information is given. What information are given about the organization? So, ideally in the job ad, it's going to say about us and maybe a few lines. Feel free to go further than that. Look on their company website, their LinkedIn page. Find out all you need to make sure that it's the right company and the right role for you. If it's a large company, maybe do a Google News search so you can see how they've been mentioned in the news maybe over the last 6 months or so. And then finally, to your question, ask for more information, such as the position description. The position description is a detailed document about the job, whereas a job ad is not as thorough as a position description can be, right? The job ad is more of an abbreviated, highlighted, here's what we really need, whereas a position description will go into a lot further details comprehensively about the job. So if you feel like you're lacking information, you can always ask for that. Also helps you sound really savvy if you know this is a job ad versus a position description, which is a bit more detailed and comprehensive. Yeah, cool. All right, so we're going to do a first exercise here and encourage the people on Zoom to also read through the ad. Just have a read through this graduate accountant tax job ad, and when you get a moment or when you finish, shout out what you think should be in a resume if you were to apply for this job ad. What sort of skills and abilities you should put in your resume. I'll give you a few minutes or a few seconds to read. Got some hands coming to you. Where's the first hand? Steve?
I'm pretty sure all students have to go through a PACE course, so mentioning that on your resume, you should go, mention that you've done a PACE course with an accounting firm.
Yeah, that's a great pickup because at the bottom there it says, some experience within a chartered accounting firm or similar would be well regarded at the very bottom there, but experience is not essential. However, when it says well regarded, that does mean if I have two applications, both equal experience degrees, same degrees, but one has experience within the industry, I'm going to consider the one with experience, right? Anybody else notice anything? And on Zoom as well, Rita.
Yeah, there's nothing here on
Nothing
Zoom.
yet? Okay.
So maybe so the duties which are included, they might be, similar skills should be, added to the resume so that, the employer can see that whatever duties a person needs to perform, that person has the skills to perform those duties. So, yeah.
Exactly. So, they're basically telling you what they want, right? By giving you what skills you need, what your responsibilities are going to be. I answer you just in case. And so, your resume should ideally be a response to what's on their job ad. I'll go ahead and reveal what you all already said. So, obviously, you want to have the correct degree. You want to, at least be planning to commence your chartered accountant's qualification, right? And then the other, some of the interpersonal skills are also highlighted, as well as some of the accounting-related skills further down are highlighted as well. And again, while experience is not essential, so it means that if you don't have experience in this field, if say you were studying accounting, you should still apply, but if someone else comes along with experience, they may be considered over yourself. Yeah? So here's a tip. So you're probably thinking, well, if I have to tailor my resume for every job I apply to, want to have to rewrite my resume for every job I apply to? Well, the answer is not from scratch. And so a great tip we have is if you design a table in like Excel or something, right? You use this as a catch-all or as a template or as your base where you put the job requirements, or you can just put the skills you have related to multiple jobs in your industry. You put why you need those, and most importantly, the evidence of how you demonstrated those skills before, and evidence demonstrated within your PACE unit, within your part-time work, within a student group or society, within any volunteering or even sports or hobbies. Because a great example of communication skills may not be within uni. And actually employers love when you talk about skills and examples of skills that are not just based in your units or your studies or what have you. Because they get those answers all the time. And so the more diverse you can make your experience, again, getting back to that well-rounded graduate, the better. So you can use this sort of table here, or template, to then kind of copy and paste and tailor and fine-tune into your resume for each job.
If there's AI for reading resumes, is there AI for reading ads to tell you what you need according to what the ad says?
Good question. Not that I know of. I know from an employer's perspective, especially we're talking about the large companies, right? The KPMGs, maybe the Westpacs. Don't quote me on this, but companies of that size may use AI software simply because they may get 200 applications for 3 entry-level roles. And so they're using the AI software to quickly scan and score the resumes by keywords that are from their job ad, then determine which ones they want to actually read. But I don't know if there's an equivalent software for, I guess, you yourself as a job applicant to review or scan a job ad to identify. But again, if the job ad is written well and written simply enough, you should be able to find that yourself. If you have questions, again, call, email for clarity. But, good question though. Does everyone understand, again, this is really simple stuff, no rocket science to use the term. Cool. So preparing your resume, at least is where Sue and I switch.
Thanks, Tyler. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Sue Wallace, working with Tari in the Careers and Student Employment team. So I'm going to cover over some different topics following on from what Tari has just covered about job analysis and the purpose of a resume. I'm now going to focus on preparing your resume. And please feel free to reach out, ask questions as I go along. I'm happy to stop there. So in terms of starting to prepare your resume, research is key. It will help you understand a little bit more about the industry, the organisation, whether the job is actually of interest to you, whether you think you can do the job or not. It also shows enthusiasm. Sometimes people have a number of different jobs that they want to apply to and just shoot off their resume and hope for the best. But actually, by doing some research and really understanding whether the job is going to be suitable for you or you think that you'd be a good match for that organisation, it's really important. So I will go into a bit more detail about that in a sec. It also helps you gather some information when you're preparing your application. So not only do you need to know a little bit about the organisation, but actually when do you have to submit the job application? What are they asking you to provide in terms of your, as part of the application? So do your research on the organisation who is advertising the job. Do a bit of research on what that organisation is involved in. Do they get involved in environmental matters, community work as an example? All that kind of thing will help you make a decision or a decision about whether that organisation might be suitable to you. But also, if you do get to the next selection stage, which is usually interview, you actually have done that research and know a little bit more about the organisation that you can talk to at the interview. Perhaps you'll be asked, why are you the best candidate for the job, or what interests you about this job? Well, you can actually say through your research you understand that they're involved in certain aspects of the community, and that's something that aligns to your values or is of interest to you. So, definitely spend sufficient time doing some research on the industry sector, the organisation itself, which I've just spoken about. See through your research, you might be able to get some information about the business unit or even some of the people or the manager in the team. Perhaps you can do a bit of a search through LinkedIn and find out who else works at that organisation or in the team. Think about what trends, or look for any trends or recent things that have happened in the news with that organisation or in the industry sector itself. So if you think about what's on topic at the moment, environmental matters, sustainability, climate change, all that kind of thing. If you're doing a Master of Environmental Science and there's something specifically happening at the moment, like it's predicted that we're going to go through another season of El Nino, and you're applying for a job in an organisation that has a strong focus or works in that area, you actually want to know what's going on. You want to know what's on in the news at the moment, and you want to know how that might tie in with the type of job that you're applying to. Do some research on the actual job itself. So Tari mentioned earlier, if you actually want to have some more information about the job, because the job ads generally are quite brief, they're doing a little bit of a promotion of the job, trying to capture your interest, but actually the position description will tell you a lot more information about the types of activities you would expect to do in that role and who you might report to. The job description will also tell you about the attributes they're looking for, the skills and the competencies. So quite often a position description isn't provided with the job ad. You actually need to reach out to the contact to ask for that. Most jobs will have a position description. I think it will be quite rare if there isn't one, but having a position description can help you have a look at the language that they use, the keywords as well, and you can actually reflect that in your resume. So really important to try and get a position description. Tari also mentioned, I think there was a question about if there's something you didn't quite understand or you wanted to know more about, ringing the contact person. That's good, but it's also another way for you to do a little bit of professional branding, sell yourself, sell your skills and why you're interested in the role. And as Tari said, that can actually fast track you through to being invited to an interview. I always like to do that just so that I stick in that person's memory and they might like to look out for my application and hopefully get an interview from that. Also important is the culture of the working environment. And I know Tari explained that doesn't mean your ethnic background. If you think about, certain types of roles might be, as an example, this is really just an example, either male-dominated or female-dominated. Yes, there are always going to be a combination of men and women working in that workplace, but is it something that, do you want to work in an industry that where predominantly you might be one of just a few males or females? That's just an example. It may not be an issue for some people, but that's what the working environment might typically be for certain types of roles. It could be, fast-paced, expecting long hours as an example. Is that something that type of role you'd like to work in for that type of organisation? So just keep that in mind. You can do a bit of research online, maybe find some people who work in that organisation and reach out to them, just introduce yourself and find out a little bit more. Obviously there's online research. I've just mentioned LinkedIn. That is probably the number one area that I would suggest you do some research. You could find people who are working in similar kinds of roles and reach out to them for some more information. Online again is in the organisation's website, social media platforms. You can actually get a lot of information from that. The typical newspapers and industry journals, just to find out perhaps if it's a Fortune 500 company, finding out a little bit more. Perhaps it's a financial review and you want to find out what's going on in that industry sector or with that organisation, or what the share market might be like. Employer associations and peak bodies, they have a wealth of information on their website and people that you can actually reach out to find more information about that industry sector in general. And networking with your friends, family members, people through LinkedIn, whether it's through social platforms, at uni, academics as an example. Just make sure that these are all different ways that you can find out information. So do your research, particularly if there's sectors, industry sectors or organisations that could even be overseas or a combination of Australia and abroad. Just look for what trends there might be if they're international organisations. What might be happening in the Asia Pacific area could be different to what's happening in the Northern Hemisphere. So just make sure that you're a little bit, you have done your research. Think about the skills that you've gained through university or any work that you've had, and try to tie that in with what the actual job is in the job ad, what they're looking for. So again, weaving all that into your resume shows that you've understood a bit about the organisation, what they're looking for, and how your skills and experience and knowledge can actually, you can fine tune that to match what the job is asking. So these are the typical sections in a resume. Again, there's no right or wrong way to actually order these, and there are some things that you may even choose that you don't have to include. So not all the sections may be needed. For instance, you may choose not to have a career objective. It's not mandatory, but a lot of people do have a career objective or summary at the beginning of their resume. So just generally with the heading personal details, just make sure that you have your contact details, if you've got a LinkedIn, your LinkedIn address, but eliminate any forms of bias. So that could be your date of birth, where you live, so you don't need to put your address in there, marital status, you know, those are not needed in a resume, and you, as I said, you don't want an employer to say, oh, that person lives in such and such a suburb, that's 2 hours away from where our job is, we'll automatically exclude you. So just, those are reasons not to have personal details in there. But for your heading, make your name clear. If you have a name and you prefer to be known by another name, you can always put that name in brackets. So my name is Susan, but I prefer to be called Sue, so I'll have him up in brackets Sue if that's what I choose to do. In terms of key educational qualifications, I've got a little example a bit further on, but just you do need to make sure that you list in reverse chronological order from the most recent to the oldest. So if clearly you're university students now, but if you've done a degree prior to this or any other form of study prior to this, that would not come first. Your university studies or whatever is current now will come first with the dates, so you're still studying. So put an expected completion date of end of 2022 as an example, or 2023. If there are any key achievements that you've gained through your university studies, let's just say you're on the merit list, you could actually put that. If you've received an award, you could, let's just say, received a PACE award for best work integrated learning activity in a group. For a particular unit, you could actually put that. So you just simply state the name of the award, the year that you got that, say June 2022, what the actual group project was, and so just in one sentence it lists that. So yes, you had a question there? Yes, probably.
All right.
Can you get any pointers from the job ad for the order of the headers to catch the employer's attention?
In terms of the education qualifications, it really is what is current to the oldest. So if you've done say a diploma before your, I know some of your master's degrees, but just as an example, you've done a diploma 2 years ago and now you're doing an undergraduate, which you will expect to complete at the end of this year. It still will be listed as Macquarie University, like the year, the dates, Macquarie University, expect to complete whenever that is, the degree you're doing, and any majors. So if you're doing a double degree as an example, you list that and the 2 majors, or whatever the combination is. Or if it's Bachelor of Business Administration, you may not need to list a major. It's up to you. Or Masters of Environmental Science, if there's a major, you can put that. Any other kind of achievements or qualifications, you could even have a subheading, key achievements or awards or something like that directly underneath that, if you obtain those at Macquarie University, just under, or have a little separate heading within the education area of that. Tari, do you have any kind of tossing to you, if you've got any advice on that?
If there are particular areas that the job ad mentions first, or that they put greater emphasis on, maybe like essential, words like essential versus desirable. Of course, both of those categories you want to make sure you cover as much as possible. But if there's something you've done that you feel like makes you more unique, or something you've done that not every other uni student had done, maybe it was selective or what have you, you can add that in. And as we said, these sections aren't set in stone, so you can even change the title or change the order, or maybe just put like university projects, for instance, and add like a case study competition or a hackathon you've done to be able to push that further up in your resume and draw more attention to it as well.
Thanks, Tyree.
I have
Oh,
done.
yes, sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay, so I wanted to.
It's on, yeah.
So I wanted to ask that, maybe in our undergraduation, I'm doing my master's currently, and if I have had some positions of responsibility in the past, like if, for example, I was the president of a society in my college back then. So will that be counted under extracurricular activities or positions of responsibilities?
Sure. I think in the coming slides, we're going to go over that section. But to answer your question now, probably extracurricular activities because it was done a few years back. But we'll go through briefly each section in a little bit. That'll probably further answer your question as well.
All right, thank you. So I guess in terms of how you structure the resume and the information that you put in each of the sections, we're really looking at trying to have maximum impact. So relating it back to the skills and experience they're looking for in the job ad, and that actually ties in really well with your question in terms of any extracurricular activities or things that you've done in the community or on campus. So we'll come back to that, but that's a great question. Professional memberships, you might, it would be ideal to put it where you've got your, probably close to where your educational qualifications are. So in a separate heading, any professional membership. So let's just say you've recently completed a Bachelor of Psychology degree and you now have become a registered psychologist. So if you're a recent graduate, you could actually put, you're a member of whatever that peak body is, or you've got a professional membership to the peak body as a registered psychologist. So in terms of employment experience, I'll cover that off in another slide, but again, be prepared to move the sections around. Whatever you think is going to have maximum impact to the reader, to the recruiter or employer, is what you really need to emphasise first. So basically, the point is you're really trying to highlight your skills and experience that are relevant to the job ad and have them, particularly in the top 2/3 of the first page of your resume, so that it will draw the employer or the recruiter's eye in. Anything that isn't going to add value or is irrelevant to the application, you don't need to have in there. So interests, you don't need to have interests in there, but you might want it included in there if, as an example, the employer is heavily involved in sponsoring a sporting club and a football club, let's just say, and you actually are a coach or a captain of a sporting group or team, then it actually could align quite well if you actually put that in there, because they can see, there are clear linkages between your interests and the interests of the organisation. Tyree mentioned before, view your resume through the eyes of the recruiter. Think about what they want to know first. They don't want to spend too much time looking through to find out what they was stated in the job ad and what they need. So again, you have to make the decisions on culling any irrelevant information or information that is not going to add value, and placing the information that is really what they want to know in the top 2/3 of the first page of your resume. Any questions so far on just the sections of a resume before I move on? Anything in the chat, Tyree? No? Okay. Okay, in terms of career objective, I guess I just want to get a sense of, with people in the audience or people via the chat, if you've got a resume, just call out and let me know, do you actually have a career objective? It's not a hard and fast rule that you should or need to, but just let me know. I'd like to get a bit of a sense on who actually has a career or uses a career objective. Yes?
Oh, I've actually removed it.
Oh, you've removed it, that's fine. I just wanted to get a sense. Yes?
Yeah, instead of career objective, I named it as a summary.
Summary,
yeah.
That's fine too. I guess there's a few different things that you can actually call that section. It really doesn't matter whether it's an objective or a summary. If you've had a lot of experience over a number of years, then yeah, probably summary is the better word to use. But so it's really just an opportunity for you to actually introduce yourself to the employer. Maybe it's saying something like a final year Bachelor of Commerce student majoring in human resources, looking to gain a graduate role in a particular organisation or industry sector where you would like to focus on, let's just say, learning and development. Maybe highlight a couple of the key skills that you have that are also listed in the job ad. So really just a couple of sentences if you choose to use a career summary or objective. It is something that, if done well, can actually add value to your application and really draw the reader in. So things to include in the career objective, I've just given an example, but obviously what you're studying, or if you're a recent graduate, you could say, a recent graduate of whatever the degree is, and then continue. So you could also focus on what you're, particularly if you haven't yet finished uni or about to finish uni, what your short-term goal is, and then think about what the longer-term goal is. You don't actually have to mention long-term goal, in your career objective, because we're focusing on the present at the moment. But it's up to you. And as I said, a few of the key skills that you can offer that have been also indicated in the job ad. So again, as it says here, make sure the information you provide aligns with the role of the organisation you're targeting, and that's where your research comes in. A really well-written career objective can actually really help your application and show the alignment to the organisation. So here's, compare the first line. I'm a third-year Bachelor of Commerce student and I'm looking to gain some relevant experience in the working world. Well, that actually doesn't tell the reader much, does it? What do they know about you? What skills do you have? You haven't even aligned it to the job that you're applying to. So, that doesn't entice me to read any further. Compare it with the second paragraph, which I won't necessarily read. You can read that now. It actually gives more information about who you are, what you're looking for, what you can offer, and why you might be the right person for the role, just in a sentence or two. Any comments on the career objective at the moment? Quite happy with that? Okay, let's move on. So in terms of education, I don't need to spend too much time on this other than you need to structure this in a formal way. So order your education and training, as I mentioned, from most recent or current to the oldest. If you've got something that you'd really like to highlight, let's just say you're a high distinction average student, so your WAM is 85 plus, you might like to actually include that, but it's not essential. And definitely don't add it in if it's average and might detract from your resume. You want to eliminate any form of bias if you can. Highlight, it's up to you if you want to highlight subjects that you've completed where you've received really strong marks in, but most employers are going to know that if you've done an accounting degree, typically what the subjects are that you've done. But as my colleague pointed out this morning, a recruiter may not necessarily know that. So if you're applying, as an example, for an auditing type role, you might want to highlight some of the units you might have done if you're doing actuarial studies, as an example. So risk units, compliance units, all that kind of thing. You might want to list there, and if you've got distinction or high distinctions for that. But I wouldn't make an exhaustive list of that, just some of them that may be relevant to the job you're applying to. And I've mentioned earlier, list any special awards or achievements. So whether you received an award for outstanding group presentation, or a PACE unit where you worked on a particular industry business issue, you might want to actually highlight that, but you can actually delve into that a little bit further under the experience section as well. Any questions so far on listing the education section of the resume? Just make sure that it's clear the date when you started the degree and when you expect to complete it. And obviously the educational institution. I've seen somewhere it hasn't been listed. They're a Macquarie student, but they've not actually listed the educational institution. In terms of employment experience, this is the main area that you really need to focus on and demonstrate with examples and achievements of how your skills and experience link to the job that you're applying to. So again, with similar to the education, you need to list the most recent job or employment that you've got through to the oldest. So if you're currently employed in retail, let's just say, you know, with Myers, even if you've got a couple of part-time or casual roles on the go at the same time, just make sure that you're listing the most recent role first. So that could be casual paid full-time work. It doesn't matter if it's casual as opposed to full-time. It's all work that you're gaining experience in, and you can demonstrate some examples of linking your skills to the job ad. So make sure that you've set it out in very clear order, so the date, so it could be June 2021 to current, that you're working in a particular organisation, list the organisation and the suburb. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily you have to list the location, but if it's an international organisation, definitely. And your position title. Make sure that you get your position title correct, because you never know if they, if you've gone to an interview and they want to do a referee check and they don't have the correct title of, you know, what you're actually working in. Yes.
I found a tip online for when you're writing your resume about the skills you achieved through a previous job is to go to that previous job's ad and kind of copy that information.
Okay.
Obviously put it in your own words.
Yes.
You know, it's tailored to you, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good habit, I think.
Yeah, no, that's right. So if you can't remember, you know, some of the main things that you might have done in a previous role, then if you've got a copy of the job ad or you are able to access that information, then you'll get the right kind of language in terms of types of activities or tasks that you might have done. But one thing that I'd like to just highlight is putting your experience and the activities and tasks that you have done in a particular role should not just be a complete dump or list of everything that you've done. Really just focus on the key things that you've done and link them back to a skill. So in terms of, you know, the job ad might say they want somebody with strong problem-solving skills. Well then you could say, as in my role as a customer service assistant, I demonstrated strong, you know, customer service problem-solving skills. Sorry, you know, and give an example. So perhaps there was a problem with an order, and the customer hasn't received their package. You can then demonstrate that you've got problem-solving skills by trying to find out what actually happened and resolve the issue to the customer satisfaction. So again, you know, with the descriptions of the work responsibilities in your role, keep it high level and brief. Again, not an exhaustive list of everything you've done, and just base it on skills. So problem solving, analytical skills, communication skills, relationship management skills, whatever they're looking for in the job ad, try to think where you or how you've demonstrated that either in your current role, or if you're not working, through your university studies. How you interacted in a group setting, working on group assignments as an example. Think about you know, how you can actually demonstrate that. It doesn't always have to be based on work if you've not had any work experience. Also, list any achievements. If there's something that you're really proud of that you'd like to highlight, something that you've done that you've gone above and beyond, you know, perhaps that meant, you know, raising extra income or through fundraising for a particular organisation you work with, and you know, you hit the benchmark of, you know, fundraising $5,000 to contribute towards, you know, some form of research within the organisation. That's a key achievement. That's something you'd like to highlight, that you've gone above and beyond, and employees would be really impressed by that. Include any overseas experience as well. Just because you've had experience overseas doesn't mean it doesn't count here in Australia. It absolutely does. Again, think about it in terms of the skills and experience that you've gained and how that can be translated into the organisation or into the job that you're applying for. So I guess really the point is you're trying to, I guess, impress upon the reader, so the recruiter or the employer, that you have the skills and experience and knowledge that they're looking for. And the employment experience section is really an important way of demonstrating that. So use strong adjectives, like if you're talking about communication skills, you could say strong written and verbal communication skills. If it's project management skills, you could say high-level project management skills as evidenced, and finish that sentence with an example. Any questions on employment experience? Yes?
Yeah. Just out, I just wanted to ask that, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to ask that, for example, I'm sorry. I was in a sales and marketing internship back in India, and I raised around like 2 lakhs in Indian rupees. So for an employment experience in Australia, I have to mention that the same amount in Australian dollars, just to make them familiar with the amount.
I would say so, yes.
Yeah, and rather than mentioning in Indian rupees,
Yes,
because they might
absolutely.
be, yeah.
They may not be able to translate it or actually grasp the importance of what you're trying to get across to the reader. So yeah, absolutely translate it into Australian dollars or language.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Good point. Okay.
Just in the interest of time, so we might need to skip the activity.
Oh, sure,
And just probably
yes.
wrap up with the slides, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of employment experience, enhancing your employment, this is an example of how you can write it in a resume so that it has impact. The reader can tell that how you've evidenced strong your communication skills, customer service and problem solving. You will get a copy of these slides, so don't worry too much about making notes at this point. In terms of extracurricular or volunteering, it is important that you keep that or have that in your resume. This is an example of how you can set it out. So if you've had some work experience in a particular role here on campus, then this is an example of how you can actually demonstrate, not just saying that you managed a training program, but flesh it out a little bit more to have more meaning. And again, for the treasurer of the Macquarie University Chess Club, you had to handle, or this person had to handle financial aspects of in their roles, so they've actually made it more meaningful. In terms of skills, you don't have to have a skills section in your resume, but if you do choose to, it actually can have impact, particularly if you've got some really good examples that you would like to draw the employee's attention to. So don't have an exhaustive list, just list some of the top